the 27th of the 2nd, 2020, and this upload is continuation with regard to the human rights violations that are happening. My hometown is TRALEE, County Kerry. This isn't anything defamatory about my hometown and county, but it is an explanation and an update that basically with the incidents of hate crime and human rights violations that have been perpetrated, there is, as of yet, still been no support or services or any effort to rectify the damages done. Altogether, I'd say there's been about 20 offences perpetrated against me. That's just in a space of 2 years. Prior to that, I've already described what I experienced, and in the space of 2 years to have experienced these kind of offences without any of the ombudsman or any of the authorities or politicians actually acknowledging how serious these offences are is just self-explanatory, really. The medical incompetence has been the worst part of it. I've had to look after my physical ailments myself without medical practitioners' support. So the medical incompetence has been pretty serious as well. The other more serious aspect of this is the avoidance tactics that I've described that have been employed by professionals to avoid confronting the enormous and tremendous damage done to me as a mother and deserted wife and victim of hate crime. The effort of individuals to avoid what they've been perpetrating has violated me even further by means of violating my privacy. My privacy's been violated, there's been breaches of confidentiality, there's been matters discussed that I haven't been consulted about. These matters are regarding my property rights, these matters regard my medical rights, these matters regard my legal rights. So there's a big obstruction of justice and a huge denial and delusion about the seriousness of this circumstance that shouldn't have happened and wouldn't have happened if people had been unable or been able to prevent themselves from making the false claims that they first started making in 2016. And as I've stated, these false claimants are still at work. There's continuous defamation of my character and reputation and good name going on here in TRALEE, County Kerry, Ireland. It's absolutely outrageous what's happened to human rights in this county. There's been fake news, there's been misinformation and disinformation, and none of it substantiated. So there's not just an obstruction of justice, there's a huge act of injustice being perpetrated against a spiritual light worker that has experienced tremendous suffering, physical and otherwise. So the Ombudsman still haven't contacted and acknowledged or addressed the damages done. There's not been proper or respectful consultation with regards to what rights I have in this country. There's been the false claims continuing, and basically there's been a huge denial by people and a huge inability by people, professional, mature adults, I might add, to address the seriousness of what they caused. And what they've caused is an awful shame for all involved, all professionals involved. There's been the most outrageous disrespect shown to me as a deserted wife and as a mother and as a professional teacher. And there's been people discussing matters and violating my privacy. So these are all serious occurrences that are going on, and ombudsmen and authorities have not yet addressed my experience of these offences. I've sent a victim impact statement to the relevant authorities. That hasn't been properly acknowledged either yet. So this is what's happening to a woman that's experienced medical incompetence and huge injustice. And this is just a recent and up-to-date share about how this has not been addressed and how the damages done are being perpetuated and worsened, and worst of all, without proper consultation, and even more worse than that, with the involvement of individuals in my private life, my personal life, my family life, etc., etc., that aren't um, that I wouldn't consider um, eligible individuals to be discussing my private matters at all, at all. So this is how serious it is. There hasn't been any improvement. There's still denial about this matter. It's still being ignored by ombudsmen, and the situation has worsened. So as regards medical incompetence, um, my application for disability allowance I'm still waiting for my third attempt of that application to be completed properly. To be completed properly by a professional. So I'm suffering on a day-to-day basis, and the amusing part about it all is that as an unemployed professional educator that's been defamed and very severely damaged by this human rights violation issue that's been caused, um, there's a kind of denial about certain agencies expecting a woman in my condition to be, you know, up and out, and, you know, so this is awful. I can't even get disability allowance. I'm not being consulted, as I've said, about my rights that I'm entitled to. There are people intruding and imposing and making decisions they're in no position to be making. So this is what's happening, and it's absolutely horrendous that this county, my home county, is experiencing this, because this isn't the county I grew up in, and this isn't the county that I've worked in for the past 20 years. So my home county has been upset by all of these problems, and that's very troubling, because with regards to civil liberties and human rights, to be so badly disrespected is it's terrible. But that's what's happening, and the agencies that I'm sharing these uploads intentionally for, I hope that you might consider how serious the violation of children's rights, women's rights, human rights, marital rights, legal rights, medical rights, all of those. That's what's happening in this situation. So I hope that the agencies that aren't confronting or addressing or acknowledging what I've been trying to communicate to you since 2017, I hope you know how slanderous and unprofessional and unethical how this whole matter has been mishandled, and how people are barging into my private life and making decisions that they're in no position to be making. And as regards the other issue of false claimants that have abused the mental health services and pestered the mental health services with false claims, and other agencies as well, um, that's how ridiculous this situation is. And in the meantime, there are authorities and politicians that are meant to be ensuring that my rights are respected and safeguarded, and they're failing, and that's a sad sign of the times for that to be said in 2020 in a democracy. So with all the information that's been withheld from me, and that is at a disgraceful level of information has been withheld from me. As I said, there's been no consultations about matters I'm supposed to be consulted about, and there's information being withheld from me. But yet there's false information being relayed and provided that is causing a bigger problem. So I hope that authorities realise how serious this is, and when people start messing around with Section 12s and 13s and making false claims and violating a person's right to freedom, I hope the mental health professionals would be courteous enough to consider victims and survivors of these kind of people's offences and address their mental health issues. So, as a mother and deserted wife and educator, and a victim of hate crime and human rights violations, could the authorities and politicians please address my victim impact statement and my complaints that I've sent to each individual ombudsman, especially the Medical Council, and authorities and politicians. This is ongoing, and until it is acknowledged and rectified and addressed properly, um, it won't be just me that will be suffering these kind of circumstances. So unless they want things to get worse, if they want the offences to get worse, or if they want more victims of these kind of violations and vendettas to be occurring in society, then would authorities and politicians care to contact me, please, and ensure that my rights are respected as much as the next person, because there's very serious issues of financial theft, identity theft, and property theft, and trespassing, and such things happening that are all very serious in 2020 for any modern woman to be experiencing. So for today, that's my upload. There's a responsibility, obligation and duty by the politicians in particular and the officials of all the relevant ombudsman agencies to ensure that injustice, discrimination and inequality and human rights violations aren't facilitated. So I'll leave it at that for today. And I'm in Tralee, County Kerry, Ireland, and my contact number is 083 836 0272, and I'm still awaiting this to be rectified. So politicians and authorities, would you mind